recording. Kristen, thank you so much for stopping by today. I'm looking forward to our chat. I'm glad we were able to connect.
Oh, me too, Victor. I've really been looking forward to it.
Okay, so let's start first with where you are right now. So you're can we call it the US managing partner for Clarity Global's US office, but you're also the global head of social. So start first with telling us about what Clarity Global is, what the US office is like, and then what your two different roles there entail.
Sure, absolutely. So, Clarity Global is one of those sort of quintessential integrated marketing agencies where started as a strategic communications firm and then through acquisitions really diversified into digital marketing. And now we really offer sort of the full suite of services. So my role coming in as I came in as president of the U.S. and we've since restructured. So managing partner, they're sort of interchangeable titles, aren't those fun? So I came in really when the U.S. was looking to have a complete refresh, new direction, really double down on having more of an integrated offering, and that's my background. Was I started in PR, strategic communications, sort of saw the writing on the wall that digital and social was the way to go. So I've been really kind of revolutionizing how we show up in the US, and that in turn led to the second hat that I get to wear, which is our global head of social media. So really making sure that social is at the heart of content and communications throughout all of our offices around the world.
Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. You're from New York State. Is it Greene? And Greene has an E at the end. Greene, New York. I had to look that up on the map. I had never heard of it. I was familiar with some of the other places you've lived in, but Greene. So tell us a little bit about what Greene, New York is like.
So, yes, so I was born in Greene, New York. Fun fact, my grandfather was the mayor of Greene, New York many, many moons ago. And
Look
the
at
high
that. You were
school
designed for PR. You already had political hookups.
I'm telling you, and the high school history teacher. So, I was
Wait,
born there.
wait, sorry. He was both the mayor and the high school. That is awesome. That is so small town USA.
I was gonna say, like, it's so Mayberry.
It is.
And it really was. So actually both of my parents grew up in Greene, New York. They didn't know each other growing up, but my dad's brother, so my uncle married my mom's best friend, and then as they do, they introduced the two of them, and the rest is history, as they say. But I actually only lived in Greene until I was 6 years old, and then moved to Syracuse, which to me was the big city at the time. Little did I know that I was a born city mouse, and I just didn't know it yet. So eventually made my way to Long Island. Went to high school in Oyster Bay, Long Island. Discovered the Long Island Railroad, came into New York City, and I knew this was where I was gonna call home at some point in my life, and now I do.
Was there a bit of shock for you? Like, because like you said, you thought Syracuse coming from Greene was like the big city. And then like New York just kind of, no offense to Syracuse, just kind of steps on that.
Yeah, well, Syracuse was its own shock because I discovered lake effect snow. So I like to
Sorry, snow? Like you didn't have snow in Greene, New York?
I mean, not to the level that Syracuse has, where, you're waiting for the school bus next to a 9-foot snowbank. So I
Oh my
think some of
God.
my toughness and grit comes from growing up in Syracuse. But yeah, no, then making my way to Long Island, yeah, culture shock, but also culture immersion. And I just the diversity, the art, the theater, just the food, all of it. I was hooked. So I kind of got over the fear really quickly, and I was like, "Give me more! Like big cities for life."
You hadn't experienced traffic yet, had you?
Oh, see,
Because
I
that's what turns it upside down for me is as soon as you see traffic, you're like, maybe suburbia or even the country isn't that bad.
that's why I'm like, I want to live in walking cities. I should have specified walking cities because, yeah, then I did like a stint in LA and DC. And that to me, that traffic's worse than New York times a million. The absolute worst.
So tell us a little bit more about your childhood. You moved around quite a bit, even though, like you said, you were only in, was it three locations? Greene, Syracuse, or sorry, and then Oyster Bay, if I
Yeah.
got it right. So would you say you had a bit of a nomadic childhood? Like every 2 years, I believe you said you were in a new place.
Yeah. Well, I would say every 2 years from, like, 18 onward,
Oh, 18 onwards,
yeah,
okay, I'm making it seem
I
like 2 to 18
embraced.
you were, like, moving around.
No, no, it was those 3 places growing up, but it was very, like, distinct chapters of childhood, if that makes sense,
That does make sense, yeah.
where, growing up in Syracuse, I had 2 older sisters, so, my identity was very much shaped by being the littlest Ingram girl and, following in my sister's footsteps, being a little bit of you know, the tag along. I was probably really annoying, like, I wanted them to play Barbies with me, and they were like, "We're too old and too cool for that."
How much older were they than you?
We're all 2.5 years apart, so my oldest sister's 5 years older, and then my middle sister is 2.5 years older than me, and 3, 3 is always a tough number because I feel like you go through phases where 2 are really close and one's a little bit always left out,
Mm.
um, until you get older, and now we're, just obsessed with one another, best friends. But then moving to Long Island, when I moved, both of my sisters were in college and it was like being an only child for the first time and no identity tied to who my family was or to sort of who came before me and it was scary, but it was also just exciting. I know a lot of people go through that experience when they go to college, and, they're away from their childhood friends and their families for the first time. I kinda had that when I was 15 years old, and so I feel like I got the booster shot of maturity at 15, and it just shaped me. It really changed me.
And speaking of your childhood, could we say that you were more of an artsy child? Because I always ask people what their interests are, and it will come from a number of different things, sports, this, that, and whatever. But for you, it was, let's go through it, music, theater, and then just general visual arts.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. If I could be doing something creative, that's what I wanted to do all the time.
And you were also a photographer. So is this darkroom photography or are we talking Photoshop digital photography?
Oh, original actually, you can sort of see it in the background here, black and white photography, like darkroom film, developing it with your hands, the toxic smell of chemicals in the dark room, I loved it. I could and did spend hours in the dark room.
Do you think as a photographer that's going to be a lost art because now anything can be generated by AI? Like it almost seems very disappointing that we're going down that route and taking the art away from the artists.
I do, and I think I I just remember I had a lot of great photography teachers, but I had one who said, "The art of photography is actually the art of how you see the world."
Mm.
And, she's like, "You can have the most mundane subject, but if you come at it from an angle that nobody expects, you make something beautiful." And I just think we take that for granted where it's, as soon as the phone comes out of the pocket, it's, nobody's trying to set up a shot or come at it from a different angle. It's like, "Oh, I just want proof that this thing happened." It doesn't feel like the art form that it was when I was coming up in the world.
And why did you focus on black and white photography versus, say, color photography?
I wish I had a good reason. I think it's just,
Is that how you saw the world? Remember what you said, like,
uh,
photographers, that's how they see the world, so you see it in very black and white, or it's very opaque.
mm. I think I probably did when I was younger, and now I'm like, "Oh, yeah, the world is nothing but shades of gray in every
There we
direction."
go.
So, I don't know if that makes me jaded or grown up, but, no, I think it was just that was the first experience that I had with it, actually bringing it back to my grandpa, the mayor of the town, my first camera was his camera, and I think that probably shaped it too, is I just had, this really kind of analog old camera that was designed for black and white film, and I just loved it.
And you kind of have to look at the camera the same way we sometimes think of, like, older people, what is it seen?
Mm,
Like, what is it shot? Like,
yeah,
this thing's seen moments in history that a lot of people are never gonna experience.
absolutely, absolutely, and it's something that you hold on to and, doesn't live in the cloud forever, it's if you lose those photos, you lose those memories completely.
And you had a limited number of shots per film, so you had to make it count. Like, how many times do you do, I don't know, do-overs with your phone, where it's like, "Yeah, I can take 5 or 6, you just keep hitting the shutter button." That wasn't the case with, like you said, analog photography.
Oh, or my favorite, "Oh, I can fix that with a filter."
Yes. I've heard that many a times.
I just had to do that with my passport photo. I was getting my passport renewed, and they're like, "Your background's too dark. This photo is not accepted." And I'm like, "I guess I'm putting a filter on my passport photo." And they're like, "This has been accepted now." I was a little horrified, but it worked.
It's the little things.
It's the little things.
I know apparently you're not supposed to, at least on the Canadian passport, you're not really supposed to smile in the photo, like just keep a straight face. So, or it can be rejected, I guess. No fun in traveling, I
Yes,
guess.
mugshots only.
Mug shots only. I ask everyone who their influences were growing up. You're the first person to come back and say your cousin. So, why your cousin?
So I think I was in a professional meets personal mindset, and she is so that person for me. One, she's like a bonus sister. So like I said, growing up with three sisters, she was our bonus sister. We were very, very close. Um, but professionally, I don't even know if she knows how influential she was on my professional trajectory. Um, Unknowingly, I followed in her footsteps in college. I didn't even know she had been a magazine journalism major, and here I am, like, studying magazine journalism, and it came up in a conversation, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm graduating next year, gonna be an adult. Like, what do you do?" And she's like, "Oh, I work in PR." And here I am. I was like, "What's PR? I've never heard of it. Please don't tell my BU professors." Um, and so she's like, "Well, you should really look into it." And I did. And again, it's like sort of the rest is history. And now she's such a sounding board for me, again, on both the personal and professional. We can talk about anything. I think she's brilliant. And almost doesn't know how brilliant she is, so it's a little bit of it's a hidden well of knowledge that I go and drink from all of the time. She's a wonderful human being.
Should we be spoiling that by sending her a copy of this episode?
Yeah, I think this gets me off the hook for buying a Christmas present this year.
Nice. Do you kind of treat her like, I'm going to say therapist, but I think that's the wrong word. But sometimes it's really important for us in this industry because it can be very tense to have someone who can be empathetic to what we're going through because they've gone through it as well, but not at your own company. Like someone a bit at arm's length that has had those experiences. Like, do you find that she helps you get through certain moments, even if she's not like guiding you through something specifically, but she's just being a sounding board and you're just hearing things back that you needed to hear in order to get through a situation?
I feel like maybe you know her. Yes. Yes, 100%. And actually she would love being called my therapist because I think we're both like we do sometimes call our phone calls our therapy sessions.
Yes.
So very, very much so. And it's nice because, a little part of me feels like I've finally matured enough to maybe give something back, to give, like, the duality of, perspectives on things that she's working on and vice versa. So, after all of the years of sort of taking from her, I feel like maybe this plus those therapy sessions are finally pouring back into her a little bit.
Your first job ever, you were in the hospitality industry and you work in the restaurant scene, you're bussing tables. So what brought you to that?
So So moving to Long Island, like I said, it was kind of a tale of two childhoods. It was the first time I was doing things on my own. Both of my sisters were like the ultimate neighborhood babysitters. And I think if I had stayed in Syracuse, I would have had gigs lined up for the rest of eternity. And it's not that I don't love children. My nieces and nephews are wonderful, but I was like, I think I want to deal with adults, which then I went and worked with hungry adults, which is sometimes worse than children.
Yes.
Uh, but it was, I don't know. I had family that had sort of, waited tables or bartended like through college or whatever, and I figured, oh, I can do this. Like, sure, no problem. You just smile and clean up dishes. I had no idea how hard the hospitality industry is, but I also think I don't know. I've actually said this through the hiring process. I feel like people sort of fall into camps of their first job, and it's like retail teaches you a certain skill set that is so applicable to our industry. Hospitality teaches you such an applicable skill set, and then more of like the internships and that kind of teaches you something else. And I just think there's just a toughness that comes from powering through when you're exhausted, when your feet are aching, when again, when you're dealing with hungry people or people who have been overserved and you just have to navigate that. Uh, I I still fall back on lessons that I learned at, 15 and 16 years old, right? Waiting tables.
So if I got it correctly, if I had to summarize what you said, it sounds like the hospitality industry taught you patience, resilience, and can we say to a certain degree how to be a people pleaser?
100%. Yes.
You already alluded to going to Boston University, but let's jump on that a little bit further. I had no idea that you actually intended to go into law before moving into it was magazine journalism and anthropology.
I did.
So what was the allure to law?
I gotta be honest, it was probably the power of suggestion. My grandmother, um, on my mom's side, who's brilliant woman, ahead of her time, was in the workforce, taught Latin, was a book editor, back when women weren't even part of the workforce. So again, just in the theme of very strong, wonderful women who influenced me in my life. She had sort of said to me, probably half as a joke, half serious, Kristen, you'd be a wonderful lawyer. You're so good at arguing. Which I realize now maybe wasn't a compliment at the time.
I've had that before too. It means you like to pick fights.
Yeah,
Or you
it
don't let
just
things go.
it just means if one starts, I'm going to argue my point. But I started thinking about it, and I'm like, that is kind of in its own way. It's theater, courtroom presentation. It kind of appealed to that side of me, like the courtroom is a stage problem solving and trying to bring someone along on a journey that was really fascinating to me. And so I just thought, being like a trial lawyer, that would be so great. And um and I got to Boston University and I quickly was like, no, pre-law's not for me. And I remember I still joke about it to this day. I was like, man, lawyers just work too many hours. I don't think I want to work that many hours. And I just laugh because I work more hours than any of my friends who are lawyers, like probably by double. I was like, well, I was wrong about that, but right to make the move to a more creative endeavor than law.
And why writing though? Because it's interesting that you would move into that given the fact that you were into photography. Like if I had, let's say I had no idea what you had studied in university, just looking at what your interests were, I would have thought maybe I was about to talk to a creative director or at an agency. So where did that love of writing come from?
I think it was more the combination of visual and either verbal or written storytelling. I love when those two things work together. Um, and working in this industry as long as I have, I realize that not everyone can do both. There are the creative directors that visually tell a beautiful story, but the words are not their strong suit, and then vice versa. A lot of communicators are fantastic with the written word, but they have no idea how to translate that to images or even visual, data representation. And so for me, magazine journalism mix the two together because you had to figure out how to both visually and verbally tell the story and make it make sense. And so that's why it really appealed to me because I did have the background in writing, but I knew I didn't want to like only do like investigative journalism or something like that. I wanted to do magazines, so it always had to have the visual component too.
Did you have a favorite magazine when you were growing up or in university?
Oh gosh, I mean, well, like if we're going way back, like Highlights magazine all the way,
I'm
formative
unfam-
childhood
I'm
years.
unfamiliar with Highlights magazine.
Oh, it was It's like it's pretty much the magazine that was always in doctors' offices and had,
Okay.
like the crosswords and everything in the back. No, I mean, I think it was really, God, I'm gonna say I was old before my time, but, being in my grandparents' house, they always had the tiny, like the tiny Reader's Digest
Mm.
always out on the coffee table, and even though, I was probably too young to really understand what I was reading, I just always thought it was so great to, to flip through it and find the different stories in it, so that was probably a really influential one growing up.
You made the jump right into PR after university, and was this an internship, an entry level role? And it was at, am I saying it right, RF Binder or RF Binder?
It's Arf Binder.
Binder, okay.
Yes. So I'm gonna bring it back. Sorry, this is gonna be a longer story than you intended
No,
me to
go
tell you.
for it.
Bringing it back to my cousin. So, I'm about to graduate in magazine journalism. I think I have one more year, one more semester left. I can't quite remember. Um, and I sort of could see that the journalism field was gonna be really, really difficult to break into. It was already going through that sort of transition, and this is, well, let's just say 20 plus years ago. We don't need to give an exact date of when I graduated. And so in talking to my cousin, and she said, have you ever thought about PR? I hadn't thought about it because I'd never heard of it. And she told me a little bit about it. And I was like, well, I could do that. And so I remember I went to the head of the PR department at Boston University. Wonderful professor, Professor Stephen Quigley. If you are still there, you shaped my life. This is for you. Um, I just boldly signed myself up for office hours. I wasn't one of his students. I can't believe he even agreed to see me. And I just sort of walked in and I was like, I think maybe a career in PR is something I might want to do. I don't know where to start. Like, would you sign me into one of your intro classes just so I can learn about it? And and he goes, well, no, I won't sign you into one of my intro classes. If you are really thinking about this, I'll sign you into my senior PR lab, which was essentially, PR lab still exists at Boston University. It's run as the agency of the university, and they bring on clients that are all nonprofits. And your class is actually to be assigned a client. You go to lecture sort of like where you meet as a team, learn from one another, but then the rest of your classroom hours are servicing a client. And I'm like, "This is great." And, so I signed up. I got put on a great big team. I can't even remember what client I was assigned. And I'm like, "I'll learn from my peers. I'll learn from the professor." And I show up the next week of class, and Professor Quigley's like, "Oh, I hate this happens every year. We had a client that missed the sign-up deadline. We're gonna have to turn them down. There's nobody to work on the business." And I have no idea what possessed me to raise my hand, but I did. And I was like, "Well, could I work on them?" And he goes, "Well, what team are you on?" And I said, "The team," and it was a great big team. He's like, "Oh, yeah, 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 there's too many people on that team. There's your client." So here I am. I have no idea what PR is. Have a client that I'm a sole practitioner on, so it was really like on the job training. Like, you got to learn how to do this, or you're gonna let this nonprofit down. Um, and it turned into the best thing that ever happened to me. I would come to class and people would be like, "Oh, I faxed a press release today," or "I cut out a newspaper clipping." And I'm like, "Oh, well, I wrote a proposal to Reebok to have them be the sponsor of this charity run that, this client's looking to do, and I organized an auction, and I met Michael Dukakis, and, they're gonna be the lead of our event." And everyone in the class, like, I mean, like, if looks could kill, they're like, "This is the girl who doesn't even she's not even majoring in PR, she has the best internship." But that's how I threw myself in the deep end, learned to swim, and it changed everything. Um, and fast forward, to I saw Arv Binder was hiring, and it turned out that Professor Quigley knew the woman who led the Boston office. And I couldn't get in touch with the client that I had interned for. They had since left the company. So I reached out to Professor Quigley and I said, I'm applying for this job. That's the only reference I have in PR. Can you help me get in touch with her? And he goes, "Oh, you're gonna work for Nancy? I'll be your reference. I'll call Nancy." And he called and he's like, "Hire this girl. She's great." And that's how I got my first job.
Did Professor Quigley ever tell you what he saw in you? Because you went in to say, "Hey, I wanna be in your introductory class," and he turned around and said, "Now you're gonna join the senior lab." Like, did he ever give you the reason behind that, like, what he saw in that first meeting?
He didn't, but I think, myself looking back, I think if I had sent an email, he would have brushed it off. I think if I had taken the easy way, but I was just like, "Oh, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna find time on his calendar and I'm gonna sort of plead my case." And I look at our industry as a whole, like that's, when you're pitching, that's what you have to do is you have to go the extra mile. And when you're doing new business development and networking, you have to go that extra mile. So he probably was like, well, if she showed up to do this, she might be okay in this industry.
And you had a couple of really big clients during your time at RF Binder. We got here? We got Dunkin' Donuts, we've got Staples. Is this CNBC as well, or am I missing that, or am I kind of throwing them together? Dunkin' was definitely part of it.
Yeah, Duncan was on CNBC. Yeah, I mean, talk about winning the Boston lottery. Um, those were the big Massachusetts-based clients, and they happened to all be our vendor clients. So, um, yeah, I mean, getting your first job out of college, getting to work on Dunkin' Donuts, like, that was the coolest thing. Everyone was so jealous. They're like, "You work for Dunks?" And it's like, "Yeah, I work for Dunks." And I laugh now because they did drop donuts and they're just Dunkin' now. I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's what everyone called them back in the day too."
Strawberry frosted donuts, always a guilty pleasure of mine.
Yes. I'm sad because having launched the maple waffle breakfast sandwich, it did not stay on the menu, and I'm still sad that it wasn't it for the long run.
How did the global recession impact your next career move?
Ooh, yeah. I lived through the '08 recession.
Right there with you. Yep.
Mm, I feel like, everyone you say '08 and it's sort of like, "Oh, I remember where I was when that happened."
Oh, I do too, yeah. Everything was looking rosy at the front end of the year, and then as soon as the summer got out, it was like, "Yep, back to school for everyone.
Yeah, it
We're
really
screwed."
it was, when you have really big clients, that can mean really big budget cuts, and so it was, "Kristen, we love you. You're working on all of our biggest accounts, but all of our biggest accounts also just had the biggest budget cuts." And that, you know, that means you're in a big pool of people that is let go. So, uh, you know, solidarity that I wasn't in it alone, but it was shocking. I mean, to that was the first 3, almost 4 years of my career. Like, I mean, I'd really made a home there, but sort of the pay it forward of, Professor Quigley speaking to Nancy Moss, then Nancy Moss was like, "Kristen, you're so good." My friend Joan Schneider has an agency, Schneider Associates. She's looking for someone at your level. So I am the luckiest girl in the world. I was unemployed for a day and a half.
Oh, damn.
I was spoiled rotten by it. So Nancy calls up Joan and she's like, "We had to let her go. If you don't take her, somebody else is going to." So she PR'd me. And I laughed because I went from working on Dunkin' Donuts to working to on the Dunkin' sister brand of Baskin Robbins. So I'm from donuts to ice cream.
Nice.
Real tough break for me.
I was gonna ask if whether or not you had to lean on your cousin for a bit of support during that, just because that was your first job in the industry and you were let go from your first job, and I I know from speaking to my friends that when you're let go that early on in your career, it can be devastating. Even though I always say this, that there's 2 types of people in our industry, those who have been let go and those who are yet to have been let go. Like, at the end of your career, everyone's gonna face that at least once or twice.
It's a rite of passage.
It
It
is.
is. I mean, like I said, I was so lucky that I had really incredible bosses who looked out for me, but yes, I mean, your confidence is shaken because you're like, "Why me?" You know,
Mm.
and it was one of those things. Again, now being in a position of running an agency, like, you do genuinely know when things are personal or performance related and when things are completely outside of your control and just economically driven. So I was able to make peace with being like, I wasn't doing a bad job. The economy was doing a bad job, but man, for a while I know imposter syndrome wasn't a coined term back in that time, but I felt it. I was like, "Oh my gosh, maybe I'm just really not very good. Maybe I'm just, disposable." And I had to work really hard to build my confidence back up.
Sandy Hill Communications. Before we go into that role, you were a supervisor there, account supervisor. Was this your first time managing people?
It was, and it was my first time, like, feeling genuinely like, "Oh, I've entered the mid-level of my career." Um, and I don't think I've realized how hard that is. I think that's honestly the hardest level in an agency because you have to manage up, manage down, and be able to answer pretty much every question that a client is going to have. It's a big change, I think, once you enter that phase of your career in communications.
Was it difficult not being in the trenches? Because I've never worked in PR directly, but I've had friends and other guests that have. And it seems like all the fun stuff happens at the lower levels. And as you start to move up the ladder and you start managing people, that's what your job becomes. Like you said, managing up, managing down, managing people around you. And you're not so much hands on when it comes to the executions, maybe being in the brainstorm sessions and so forth. Did you find that when you started to make the climb? And if so, how did you handle it? Like, was it a bit of a cold shower for you?
Yeah, I mean, I would say I think I've probably gone out of my way in my career to still be somehow in the trenches because I just feel like overseeing the work, if you're still not tied to the work in some way, you're not close enough to really be doing a good job. So even now, like, it's funny because, like I said, I'm a managing partner, but I'll still be pitching media sometime, or Lord knows my team's like, "Oh, Kristen's building the deck." That's the magazine journal. I was like, "Yeah, no, I'll make it pretty. Let me do it." Um, so I agree. I think that that does happen a lot, that you start to be achieving this, like, operational and people excellence and getting too far away from the craft, and it is really difficult, but finding ways to stay tied to it, either through, just being, like, a voracious consumer of media and being like, "Hey, like, I read this thing," or "This is trending," or "This is a creative idea." I I just feel like I just feel like you have to still try to do that and want to do that.
It helps keep you sharp, that's for sure. And this move also meant you left New York for Baltimore.
I did. I
So,
did.
what was so attractive that you left New York for Baltimore?
Well, let's just be honest, every time I've left New York, it inevitably feels a little bit like a mistake.
Okay.
That's not true. It is a lesson. There are no mistakes. There are lessons. No, I mean, so at that point, a lot of my family had moved down to the Maryland area, and so I was moving to be close to family. My grandmother was aging, and I wanted to be close to take care of her. My mom, my both my older sisters were in the Maryland and Virginia area, so I think it was a little bit of making a decision to be close to family, and it just happened to be a good career move because it was a step forward, and it was a diversification of the clients that I was able to work with. I got to work with the World Series of Poker. I got to do a lot more in the travel and tourism industry, which was really exciting for me. It was an industry I'd always wanted to be involved in. And I knew that I'd be taking on a lot of those clients and learning that business. So that was really my impetus for going at the time, and, like I said, not mistakes, lessons. I learned a lot at that agency.
Did a lot of your CPG experience working on Baskin Robbins and Dunkin', did any of that really transfer over to, like you said, the World Series of Poker? And you were working with it was, is it the Grand Ole Opry?
It is the
Yes, you
Grand
work
Ole
on the Grand Ole
Opry.
Opry, okay.
I did during the historic Nashville floods. It's funny to me how I think, and this is coming from someone who is a very purposeful generalist. I think so much can be applied from different client industries into new industries, um, and it feels very new. So, things that I learned in CPG and in the food and beverage industry inevitably would influence, how I would approach something in sports, or something in entertainment and hospitality would then translate over into technology. And it's not necessarily intuitive, but it's more like, not to use my big words, but I just feel like the best sort of communications and marketing programs always connect through the cultural zeitgeist. And and so many of these industries are the great connector. For a long time, it's, anyone can sit down over food and wine and bond. And I think now it's like technology, like there is no technology agency anymore. Or agency industry, like every industry is actually technology now. Healthcare is technology. Food and agriculture is technology. So all of that is to say, yes, I loved applying things that worked really well. So like partnerships or influencers that we had used for Duncan, thinking about, "Oh, okay, how can I completely change the media makeup of the final table of the World Series of Poker, and have a greater mix of these social influencers?" And I mean, this is before, like, real podcasts existed, but actually, make room for podcasters to be in the very, very finite media pool for the final table, and it changed. It changed how the World Series of Poker was covered from that point forward, which is really exciting.
So what brought you to Finn Partners? And you, if I've got this right, you were the managing director. So now you're pretty much at the top at this point of this agency. If not, you're pretty damn close to touching heaven.
Yeah, their titles were different. So I had just reached the, like, senior echelons of, like, you are in charge of this client.
Okay.
So not in charge of the agency yet. I was not ready, but in charge um, of the client itself. Bringing it back to that pesky cousin of mine. This is when I did rely on her. So she gets a ton of credit for this. So I'm in Maryland again. I was learning a lot, but I knew I kind of wanted to come home. I wanted to come to New York. And she had a former colleague of hers at Apple who was now leading the comms function at the North Face. And the North Face had lost their internal PR and comms team, as well as they'd had a fair amount of agency turnover, and they were looking for basically the new agency lead of their business. So the client was recruiting into her agency, and she's like, they'll be hired by the agency, but they'll basically be in-house at the North Face for at least a year while I rebuild this function. Do you know anyone? And my cousin's like, I do. And so I met the client before I met the Rooter Finn, what would become Finn Partners team. She and I hit it off, and she recommended me to apply to the agency. So, I mean, that's probably the best negotiating position I will ever be in my life, where it's like, "Well, the client really wants me to run this business for her. You should hire me to come and run this business for her."
No, absolutely. Okay, so what was that dynamic like? Because I've heard of this before, exactly what you went through. So you're on payroll for the agency, but your desk is at the client or is with the client at their head office.
Yeah, so I actually went, between. So I would work at the agency, leading the agency team, because there was a great team working with me at the time. But then I would, split the time working at the client. So it was very different for me. I'm like, "Wait, you want me to be the spokesperson at the trade show?" And they're like, "Yeah, no, you have to lead every media meeting, and you need to, you know the chemical makeup of every synthetic fabric in this product line." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm so intimidated." But also, wow, do you learn so much so fast. So it was, I stayed there for a few years. I eventually moved back to be, like, wholly on the agency side. We still worked with the North Face, but I was able to take on other clients too. And it was, I mean, it was just fascinating, and it was also really nice because all of the new people that came in as full-time employees of the North Face, I got to be privy to that interview process. I got to help train them on the North Face product line, and the Summit series, their speaker series, their stable of athletes, and it's probably the most immersed in a company's corporate culture that I've ever been in my life. It was just deeply rewarding.
Was that difficult, relinquishing those duties considering how close you had been to the client? Like, people always have in our business, always have a hard time moving on from a client, especially if they've got a great relationship with them. But in that case there, you were practically family with them.
I mean, it actually did feel like family. I think on some level, yeah, I was probably sad to I don't wanna say become irrelevant, but to become less needed, and to be like, "Oh, I don't need to know what, 7 colorways that comes in anymore. Well, what do you need me to do?" It was difficult, but then also, I mean, that's just, like, what an amazing company. I still follow that brand. I still admire everything that they do, everything that they stand for. Um, I will just, I will always be their biggest fan.
Did you channel any of your experience with the snow in either Greene or Syracuse? We were talking earlier about like 9-foot tall snowbanks, and I'm just picturing you ushering in an ad going, "No, there is a little girl somewhere who needs this winter coat because she's waiting for a school bus in what looks like a snow apocalypse."
My gosh, actually, oh, this is such, like, a nerd moment, but they had little kid snowsuits that, by the way, I had dreamed of having when I was younger, but they were the first company that they had this, like, secret little stitch inside of it. There was, like, a string that you could pull, and then the length of the legs would grow like 2 inches, and so they were the first company that was like, "We don't want you to buy this really, like, this really high-end expensive thing for your kid for 1 winter, like, we're actually designing it that, you can have it for more than 1 year." And I remember just being like, "The entire city of Syracuse is gonna thank you right now because, like, you need your Halloween costume to fit over a snowsuit, you need your Easter finest to fit over a snowsuit, like, this is a big deal."
The tagline should have been good for at least 2 winters.
Good for at least 2 winters, I'm telling you, yeah.
What brought you to PMK BNC? And what did your role as senior director there entail?
Mm, alright, so the other lesson that I learned. There was a little part of my brain that still thought working with celebrities would be really cool. Yeah. It's not cool. I just want everyone to know. It's not as great as you think it's going to be.
Tell me there's a
Um,
story coming.
there is. I'm gonna spill trade secrets.
Okay, let me say this first. So a friend of mine who worked with celebrities, in media in media said to me that if their if their management team is very nice, it means that the celebrity is very difficult to work with. Or it's the other way around, is if the management team is very difficult, it means the celebrity is very nice and probably a pushover. And and in both instances, they're compensating for the person that they have to represent.
Yes. I couldn't agree more, and I will add a third category, which is sometimes a celebrity is so crazy that the only person that they can hire is someone more crazy than they are.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
I won't
How
name
crazy
names. I
y
won't name names. I'll just say she does have the most popular Christmas song every single year.
know who you're talking about. I won't say it out loud, but I know who you're talking about.
Well, that'll be an Easter egg for everyone.
That will be the Easter
Um,
egg. In the comments, if you think you know who it is. We won't confirm.
yes, we will not confirm nor deny. No, so again, PMKBNC, they had this really, and they're since have spun off into other alphabet soup since then. But at the time, it had been these two agencies coming together, and the PMK side was really about working directly with celebrities, and the BNC side was about working with brands. And they're like, hey, wouldn't it be wonderful, and wouldn't there be so much, let's use the buzzword synergy, if it was all under one roof, and then brands who want to be working with these celebrities will have this, unlimited access to them. PS, they didn't get any more access to them than anybody else did, but it was a really, really wonderful sales proposition. And so I thought, like, wow, I'm now at that point of, yeah, I want to do like the big brand commercials and the big celebrity integrations. And I was hired to work on the Pepsi account at the time, and I knew this was, before she was as huge as she was, but it was like, Beyonce is about to be their spokesperson. Like, oh, this would be so cool. And so I'm all set to start, and Hurricane Sandy hits New York.
Mm.
So that was Sunday night. My first day of work was supposed to be Monday. I did not go to work for 2 weeks because the office had no power. I think everyone knows what the city was living through at the time. And so, it's 2 weeks later, and I show up for my first day, and they're like, "So sorry, here's the curveball. We actually are moving you to oversee the Beiersdorf business, and so those are the brands that you're going to be working with now." So it was Nivea and Eucerin and Aquaphor, which are basically beauty brands. They're more, kind of dermatological than beauty. But I was like, oh, God, like, I've never done beauty PR. I don't know what I'm doing. This is going to be brand new to me. Um, Again, it worked out really well because Nivea was the title sponsor of Times Square New Year's Eve, and so I didn't like wasn't working with Beyonce, but I, was working with Taylor Swift in Times Square before Taylor is as big as she is now. So wow, like, just talk about, again, a place of learning so much and just being like, oh, okay, this is what we do now. And these are, now we're going to be the title sponsor of the New York City Triathlon, and really huge activations. Just a fertile learning ground for sure.
What brought you to Porter Novelli then, and what did your role as VP entail?
So this was, again, this world and this industry is so small. Um, so Porter Novelli had the Timberland business at the time, and the Timberland business had just been acquired by VF Corporation, which is the same parent company as the North Face. And so they were looking more or less to revamp their agency communications. And so Porter Novelli was looking for someone who could understand sort of how to operate in the VF Corp model. And I was like, hi. I worked in house basically at the North Face for a few years. And so it was a new agency, but in the same way it felt a little bit like a homecoming because I had just the comfort of knowing how to work within that organization, knowing what worked really well, knowing a lot of the executives and the stories that they were looking to tell from a sustainability standpoint, from a product development standpoint. Um, so, I just, again, I got to jump straight into the deep end and just start swimming immediately, which was so much fun. It was so much fun.
Were a lot of your peers from the VF Corp still present when you moved over to Porter Novelli and you jumped in on the business?
Um, yes and no. A lot of them were still working on the North Face business, but the C-suite had actually had a lot of like shifts. So VF Corp, like as the parent company, had moved a lot of the North Face's leaders into the C-suite at the parent company level. So, like a lot of the folks that I had met as, like president of the North Face, they were now like, vice president at VF Corp. And so it was a little bit of like, oh, I already know you. I know your media training. I know who you've spoken with. I know what media like you're excited to talk to. I know where your red flags are and what you don't want to talk about. And so wanting to operate on the agency side and bring that real, like, peer-to-peer strategic counsel, I had a lot of built-in trust with the executives, which was hugely beneficial for the whole Porter Novelli team.
And then what brought you to, is it Buffalo Dot Agency?
Yes.
And you're the
So,
CEO, Chief Operating Officer there.
yeah, talk about just whoop, taking a taking a leap into a totally different world. Another funny story for you. So I stumbled across Buffalo. So it was Buffalo Dot Agency. It started as Buffalo Group. Um, I ran across them in a magazine article. It was an interview that the founder had given, and he was sort of talking about their creation story. So they were a marketing agency that was founded within a golf management company. Just
Okay.
you yeah, I know you would never think it, but it was sort of they were doing, marketing and events and promotion for golf courses, and then they realized, like, they knew the golf industry so well, and so then they started working with golf apparel and then golf equipment, and it sort of grew beyond the confines of the parent company, and it had formed its own standalone agency, and the founder, a gentleman by the name of Rich Katz, had given an interview just sort of on his future vision. He was like, we know this sort of athleisure audience better than anyone, but we're sort of neglecting them in wintertime. Like when golf season ends, what do they do? And he's like, there's this adjacency to like the ski and snow industry and the outdoor industry and hiking, and I'm just like bing, like my North Face bells are going off again. I'm like, well, I know that, and I know that audience too. So I don't know what possessed me to do it. I just completely sent a cold email, and I was like, I was reading your article. Really admire your vision for the agency. No, you're not looking for anyone right now, but in the future, if you are, and you need help, kind of going down that path of entering more of that winter sports market, want to introduce myself. And again, they were in Virginia, so I was like, turns out you live really, or your office is really close to my family. If you want to grab coffee the next time I'm in town, I would just like love to meet you. Sort of like long term planning. um, and little did I know that they actually were looking for someone to come in, because they were in growth and rebrand mode. So I met the founder, I met the co-CEO, and what I thought was going to be a cup of coffee turned into a job offer. And 2-3 weeks later, I was moving to DC to lead their agency.
So literally, how quickly did they get back in touch with you after you sent them that note?
I can laugh about it now because I know how Rich is. Rich is a morning person. So I had sent my email after hours. I don't know, it was like 6, 7 PM. I had sent it after work, and he had replied by 7 a.m. the next morning.
And then that coffee, which was actually a job interview, that happened what, like 2, 3 weeks after you said?
It's I think I was planning to visit my family like a week or so later, and so I was gonna be in town anyway, and yeah, that coffee led to 2 more meetings. And yeah, I think the whole process was a month,
Did
less.
you did you expect it to move that quickly? When you sent that email off, you're like, "Unlikely, maybe, just maybe I'll hear from them in about 6 to 8 months, if anything."
At best, I think I was like, "Well, this is a really cool agency. it's right near my family. I've wanted to, to lean into the sports marketing side of, because I had done a lot of work through clients in sports marketing, but I was like, this is a whole sports marketing agency, which I know, like the artsy music girl. I'm also like, I love sports. I don't play them well, but I love them.
What's your sport, your go-to team?
Oh, see, I'm an NFL football girl. Go Broncos. Love the Broncos. I actually have a picture of me with all of their Super Bowl trophies, and
Really?
it's one of
How
my
come
prized
you're
possessions.
how come Denver versus you have 3 teams in New York State? You coulda gone to actually, no, sorry, I shouldn't say that because I think I saw a social media post once from the Buffalo Bills that was reminding everyone that they were the only team that actually the only New
It's
York team
actually
that
in New York.
plays in New York.
Mhm.
So, yeah, why the Broncos over, I guess, anyone else you coulda picked?
Yeah, it's funny. It's a very long story of following being loyal to players that when I lived in Syracuse, I lived across the street from the defensive coordinator of the Syracuse Orangemen, and so I used to go to the practices, and then when all of the players went pro, I would, like, cheer for those players, and, sure enough, that that was my reason for finding the Broncos, and then that's just I mean, that's an incredible sports organization, so they've kept me. Even after they got rid of Peyton Manning, which was such a glory time for the team, still loyal to him.
It's funny that you said it that way because I mean, minor league hockey is very big in Canada, and I see that from my friends that grew up in small towns that had minor league hockey teams, is that they won't root for the next closest NHL team. They will follow those players to wherever they went because they had such an impact on the community for, like, the 1 to 2 years that they were playing there before they moved on.
Mhm. Yeah. So that's how I found the Broncos, and yeah, I still want nothing but the best for them. Then again, there were several years of being very competitive in fantasy football where I was like, "Oh, no, now I'm back to just cheering for players. I don't have to cheer for teams anymore."
Nice. But you found your way back to New York, though.
I
You did. So
did.
that was your next role at Padilla, and, I mean, what was the attraction to the company? You were an SVP there and a group lead. What do those 2 hat like, explain to us those 2 hats because it sounds like, 1, you're running a group and a smaller team, but at the same time, you've got another eye looking at the entire agency.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so, once again, a New York homecoming. Once again, a really fantastic colleague who was helping me along the way. So, wonderful gentleman by the name of Ed Hoffman. He and I had worked together at Porter Novelli, and he had moved to Padilla, and they were looking to essentially create an entirely new role within the agency. And at that agency, they'd never had a role like this before, which was intended to be um, a fully growth minded role. So it's basically like you are going to come in and you're going to do new business, um, which is obviously one of the many hats that I love to wear. I just think of new business as it's like you get paid to like figure out how to solve people's problems. This is great.
Do you like the
So
thrill of the hunt? Like, sorry, not to cut you off there, because I like new business as well, like reading up, learning about the client, and going in and, like you said, the whole performance of trying to win them.
yes. Oh my goodness, yes. And I've always said if they ever invent a role that is chief problem solver, that's the role I want. Like I just want to get in, do all of the listening, get deep in the weeds of figuring out what the problem is, come up with a really creative solution and be like, this is how you solve your problem. But I don't actually want to stay and solve it. I just want to be like, there you go, have fun. Like I figured out how to solve it. Enjoy.
Here's your life jacket. You're not drowning anymore. Just move your body until you get to shore.
Yeah, wouldn't that be a great job?
Well, there's no shortage of acronyms in our industry. So CPS will definitely, if you want to make it happen, and the minute you make it happen and there's a glorious press release around it, every other agency around you will be like, we need a CPS too. And then that will become like a standard position at every agency in years to come.
Excellent. Okay, well, now we have documented, like, this is my IP.
It's your IP right there.
Nobody else find it first.
Nope. So you left Padilla and you went out as an independent consultant. before we get into the details of that, was that scary? Being your own boss for the first time and being responsible, really being directly responsible for your livelihood?
Yes. Yeah, yes, and, I think it was scary, but not in the way that I thought it would be scary, which was it wasn't necessarily like, "Oh my goodness, like, I'm taking a big leap and I could fail." It was scary in the sense of you are now about to basically have 2 full-time jobs, and one of them is to, find and sell to clients. Like, new business is a full-time job, and then when you sell it in, now you have to actually execute and do all of that work, and that's a full-time job. And how are you going to balance those full-time jobs without completely burning yourself out? And one thing I know about myself, like I have such scarcity mentality. Like I am scared to ever say no because I'm like, well, maybe if I say no, I won't get another opportunity. And
I
so
know that feeling, I can be empathetic to that.
yeah, and so that to me was the scary thing is like, oh, you're gonna have to learn a new way of being and learn a new way of balancing how you can show up fully invested in something, but maybe then the next day be fully invested in the other thing. Like it's just sort of like there's only so many hours in the day and you can't do it all. And and some days like 20% is going to be better than 0 or 100. And
Mhm.
and so it was a total reset for me, and I think that was the thing that was scary because it was almost like a soul searching moment that also happened to be, like, really rewarding. I got to be hands-on with work again in a way that I don't know, just sort of like reinvigorated my pride in the work because it's like, "Oh, no, like, I did that. Like, I built that thing. I like, it is like, that's my baby going out into the world." It was yeah, it was just it was a total mindset refresh for me.
Did you find that you had to shake off a little bit of rust with some of the duties that you hadn't done in a long time? Because, like you said, you are a one woman show. You're doing everything from the bottom up, and you're only accountable to yourself and your clients.
Yes, and, shaking off the rust and breaking some bad habits. I think it's the journalism major in me. Like, I love a really, really tight, tough deadline. I'm like, "Ooh, yes." Like, I wanna do something when it's crunch time. And now I'm, running a consultancy where it's like, no, you actually have to build realistic timelines and you have to do a little bit on it every day. It can't be, it can't be a company that's run on like all-nighters and crazy deadlines.
Yeah.
And so I had to find, new motivation that wasn't like, "Oh my god, it's a impending deadline." And I had to learn, like, don't procrastinate to falsely create that situation for yourself. Like, you can actually have a much more balanced day if you just do a little bit every day.
Were you like that in university where you left the assignments to the last second?
Oh goodness, yes. I would be that person pulling an all-nighter in the computer lab. Coffee didn't work, so I would have a bag of Sour Patch Kids.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like a little sugar rush plus, like, the sour perks you up and wakes you up, yeah. Oh, I loved nothing more than, like, "Ooh, 12-page paper, I can do that in 6 hours."
See,
Maniacal.
I was the kind of person that sometimes would do that, and sometimes I would take my time, like you said, a bit every day. And I found that if I got it done early, I would then spend the final days leading up to the deadline obsessing over the paper, like reading it over and making stupid changes to the point where I would have to smack myself and go, just submit it now. You're going to spend the next few days rewriting it and wasting time. Like you're basically going to spend all the time you would have doing the all nighter in that realm, just like in that small space. So I'd have to get rid of it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm that person that I would rather be the editor than the author, um,
Mm.
I don't know, maybe I just love a good red pen. Um,
Jeez.
it could be
That's a good way
that.
of putting it.
But my problem is that I'll self-edit as I'm writing, and I'm like, "Why are you going back and editing a paragraph? You don't even know what's coming after that paragraph yet." So
That's a
it's the
good
same
point, yeah.
yeah, it's the same way where I'm like, "Okay, you've rewritten this paragraph 6 times and you don't have the paragraph after it. Didn't matter. It was probably better the first way." And so, like, with the shortened, like, the tight deadlines, it's like, just get it down on paper and then edit the whole thing, and look at how much more efficient that is. So I had to, like, apply what worked well for me, but take the, you know, gut-wrenching stress out of it.
Kristen, let's bring everything full circle. So,
Okay.
what brought you to Clarity?
Ugh, I there's so many things, but, like, it was such a serendipitous, like, right place, right time, right opportunity. I'm gonna sound a little Pollyanna-ish about it, but I just feel like in our industry, there are so few, like, legacy creating moments, and if you ever find one, you have to say yes to it. You just have to. And, in meeting my CEO, Rachel Gilley, I remember the first time that we talked, we were supposed to talk for 30 minutes. I think we talked for 2 hours. We just hit it off, and it was so refreshing because it was like, "Look, this is the situation you're going to walk into. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Like, there's a little bit of, a transformation happening, and if you can oversee that transformation, like, there's so many good ingredients here, and we just want somebody who knows how to use these ingredients, and then sort of sky's the limit." And I'm like, well, I happen to know how to do that. Like, between what I had done at Buffalo, with kind of the operational side, with what I had done at Padilla with the new business side, um, I I was like, "Oh, I get to do all of, like, the favorite things that I've done recently in my career all together. Yes, sign me up." And so that's really what it's been is, I got to walk in. I mean, really just truly with one of the most talented teams. I'm endlessly impressed by them. They're so smart, they're so strategic. They they they're like me, they hate the status quo. Like, they want to innovate, they are brave enough to try new things. They're okay with being pushed outside of their comfort zone, and so we get to do that, and we get to really be shaping the future of our industry within the sort of confines of an agency that's nimble and innovative and willing to sort of boldly evolve as our industry as a whole is rapidly evolving. And so I just sorry,
No,
I'm,
go
like,
for it.
singing the praises, but man,
No.
it's a really exciting agency to be a part of at this moment in time. Absolutely.
I want to go back to the interview that you just cited a couple of minutes ago. You said you met your future boss, you were supposed to sit down for 30 minutes and it turned into 2 hours. You also mentioned that she was very candid about the challenges that this person would be facing. Was she very upfront with those challenges early on in that conversation, or did she wait until it looked like you guys had a rapport for her to really open up to you?
No, I mean, I would say that she opened up pretty early on, and I'm so thankful that she did because she was just gonna be she knew, like, who she was looking for and what was gonna be needed. It had to be somebody who had sort of a proven record of being able to help an agency transform, and in particular, help a communications agency transform into an integrated agency where, so much of what we do as an industry now is no longer like I call it like we don't smile and dial and do earned media anymore. It has to be more than that. And so she needed somebody that understood that that was the future, had the experience of having done it, and knew like also had learned from, maybe the mistakes of having done it the wrong way in the past or I guess had like lessons to apply to it. And so she was very candid. Um and was kind of like, if it scares you, that's okay. Like I probably don't want someone who scares easily. And I was like, scare me. Like, no, it's like it sounds like Christmas morning. And so I walked away from it being like, I have to get this job. Like, I just have to get this job. But then I also was like, man, that seemed too easy. Like, I don't
Mhm.
know.
I know that feeling, yeah.
Maybe she didn't like me. The imposter syndrome came back again. But no, it just obviously she and I can talk about it now, and she's like, "Oh no, I knew. I knew from the first conversation."
Kristen, if anyone listening or watching this wants to get in touch to learn more about what Clarity does, what's the best way to do so?
Oh goodness. Well, one, connect with me on LinkedIn. I will answer any of your direct messages there. But I would say um, the best way to really learn about, particularly what we're doing in the U.S. market, is to go to clarity.global/tech PR. So tech dash PR, and that's where you can really hone in on what we're doing specifically in the U.S. market, but how not we're not just working with US companies, we're helping global companies to succeed in the US market.
Perfect. Alrighty, you ready for rapid fire questions?
Oh, goodness. Okay.
All right, the campaign or PR project that you are most proud of.
It's one that I haven't even talked about yet. But when I was at Buffalo, I had brought the U.S. Golf Association on as a client, and I mean, talk about doing cool things. Like we got to do the U.S. Open, the U.S. Women's Open, all of those. But the thing I'm most proud of was at their annual meeting. I put together um, a panel that was intended to show the importance of them creating a US adaptive open and and really having a US open that anyone with either physical or mental disabilities could be a part of so that golf really could be for everyone. And we had speakers from the Invictus Games. We had speakers from the research arm of Cedar Sinai talking about how sport had helped wounded veterans to overcome PTSD. We actually had, uh, 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 well, athletes, golfers, male and female golfers who were competing either with, physical disabilities or mental disabilities. And it was truly one of the most powerful things that I've ever been a part of because it put a face to something that needed to happen, and, um, and I would say years later, actually, as of 2022, there is a US Adaptive Open, and people saw the importance of it and made it happen.
Your favorite movie?
Oh, this is so hard.
This is usually the hardest question
I
for
know.
people. You would
I
be
know.
surprised how many people lean towards Shawshank Redemption even though they want to say Mean Girls because they feel they're being judged by their choice of film.
I would say there are some movies that if I stumble across them on TV, I will end up sitting and watching it, like The Departed, Top Gun. But my sisters would kill me if I didn't say it. Steel Magnolias. We can sit and we can quote it like from beginning to end amongst us. And by the way, I'm totally Weezer.
Okay. If Hollywood were to make a movie based on your life story, who would you want to play you?
Oh, see, this one I know. Rachel McAdams. I think she is hilarious. Speaking of Mean Girls, she's
That's true,
absolutely
yes.
hilarious. But actually, the movie The Family Stone, that's a holiday movie. My sisters joke all the time. They're like, "You are her character in that movie," and so I think it'd be like, very meta to have her play me in a movie.
If Hollywood were to make that movie based on your life story, what would you call it?
I would call it This Too Shall Pass.
I think you're my third guest who has answered that question with "This too shall pass." And if not for the name of the movie, at least they're, the best advice they had ever received. So that comes up quite a bit. Okay, your favorite book.
This one is actually impossible to choose because in that really wonderful female influence family, it's like multi-generations of librarians and book editors. So they would scold me if I ever chose one. Um, but I will say the one that I'm reading right now, the one that's next to my bed and I'm loving is Ina Garten's memoir. It is beautiful and heartwarming, and everyone should read it because Barefoot Contessa's the best.
Your favorite song?
Soul Shine by the Allman Brothers.
The best advice you have ever received?
The best advice I ever received. You can't pour from an empty vessel. That you have to it's sort of so my mom was a flight attendant, and you know the airline video, like, you need to put your own oxygen mask on before you help those around you. Like, that applies to life in general. Like, you gotta remember to put on your own oxygen mask.
If you could go back in time and give your younger self advice, what would it be?
This one, that making other people happy doesn't actually make you happy. That's a lie. Making other people happy makes other people happy, and it can be exhausting. So you have to figure out what makes you happy and then work on making others happy.
My signature closing question: if you weren't in PR, what would you be doing and why?
Well, my whole team makes fun of me because on bad days, I'm like, "Oh, forget it. I'm gonna go sell flip-flops on a beach somewhere." So maybe not selling flip-flops, but, like, let's bring it back to hospitality, like tiki beach bar on a beach on a tropical island somewhere.
And we're going to end things right here. Kristen, thank you so much for stopping by today.
It's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Loved it.